Hi there, my name's Carrie and I recently had a request to do a video on how to design a lawn sprinkler system. And this video will cover the most common type of sprinkler system, which is one that's connected to city water. It has a water meter and it's under pressure. If you have a sprinkler system that is fed by a well pump or irrigation water, another term is secondary water, a lot of aspects of what you would see in this video would be different because in those type of systems a lot of times you are dealing with sprinkler pumps, pressure tanks, and dirty water. So those aspects won't be covered in this video. What I'm going to do is create a sprinkler design for my home. 10 years ago when we bought our home, the sprinkler system was a mess, and I've spent the last number of years retrofitting the sprinkler system to get it to work. So what I will do here is create a new design for my home, and in the event that my old sprinkler system fails, then I will go ahead and use this new design to install a new sprinkler system. The first thing I want to do is create a plot plan of my house and yard. Notice how I've measured off all aspects of my yard, the dimensions of the house, how wide grass areas are, and written everything down in this notebook. This will eventually be put to scale on some graph paper. So the first thing you want to do is measure off your yard. If you don't have any graph paper on hand, one of the things that you can do is go to a website. There's a lot of websites out there that have forms you can download so that you can design a sprinkler system. And in this case, I went to rainbird.com to their sprinkler design service and clicked on that page so that I could download forms to design my sprinkler. Once on their site, all I have to do is click on the homeowner sprinkler design request form in PDF, and it will download to my computer. Rainbird's download has two pages. One is just a blank sheet of graph paper, and the first sheet is where you can enter information about your water system. So with the Rainbird PDF form downloaded and printed out, what I want to do next is find out how much water I have available for use at my yard. So what I'm doing here is testing the water pressure at my home. What I've done is just threaded on a pressure gauge on a tap coming out of my house. You noticed my pressure was right on 70 pounds, so I will go to page 1 on Rainbird's form and just check the 70 to 79 psi. My water service line is copper 3/4 inch, and my water meter size is also 3/4 inch. So with those numbers in mind, what I need to do next is figure out how many gallons of flow I can use for each sprinkler zone in my sprinkler system. To find that number, I will go to a flow chart. This is a flow chart. Notice that it's PVC Schedule 40 plastic pipe. This is the kind of pipe I would use in my sprinkler system. If you look at the 3/4 inch column and go down to 8 gallons per minute of flow, notice that the velocity in feet per second is still below 5 feet per second. This is the ideal number. If I go down a little further on the flow chart to say I want to use 11 gallons a minute, notice that it's in the gray area. The velocity would move up to 6.6 feet per second, but that's still an acceptable number for me. So what I'm going to do is design my sprinkler system to use between 8 and 11 gallons per minute. What I will do next is take the information from my notebook on my yard and start entering that information on the graph paper. So to enter the information on the graph paper, all you need is a pencil, a small ruler, and what I like to use is a curve template for the curves in my yard, and that's all there is to it. What I will do is transfer the information from the notebook to the graph paper. And in this case, my scale will be 1 inch is equal to 20 feet. This is what my basic plot plan looks like, drawn to scale. The next step is to draw in trees and shrubs, anything that would affect the location of the sprinkler system. And the next step is to start plotting in sprinkler heads. Just a quick note here about sprinkler heads. In smaller areas of your lawn, it's usually better to use spray heads because you get more precision in the watering with the spray heads. And when it comes to bigger sections of your yard, it's usually better to use rotors. And that's because it's cheaper to install rotors. You use less material and piping using rotors than you would with using spray heads. In this area of the drawing, you can see that I've plotted in 9 sprinkler heads. If I installed Rainbird's 1500 series nozzles on these heads, they would use 14 gallons a minute. But if I used Rainbird's R13 rotary nozzles, these 9 heads would use 8 gallons a minute. 8 gallons a minute is acceptable on my flow, so what I will do is plan on these 9 heads being on one sprinkler zone, and this zone will use 8 gallons per minute. Now I will move on to the next section of my yard. This is a bigger section, so this would be a good place for using rotors. And another thing I like to do when plotting in sprinkler heads is start in the tight corners first and work out from there. These are the 2 tight corners in this zone. So I'll plot a head in each corner. Then I'll go ahead and plot a head in each of the other corners. Once I get the quarter heads plotted, or the corner heads, what I will do is measure the gap between the quarter heads, and in the center of that gap I will plot in half circle rotors. One of the ways I like to check my sprinkler design to see what kind of coverage I'm getting is to take a compass, and with a compass I can draw in the radius of what a sprinkler head will do. What I'm after is head-to-head watering or something near to it. If you run into the term 50% spacing, that simply means head-to-head watering. In this area there are 8 heads. If I use Rainbird's 3504 rotor as my sprinkler head and I put 1 gallon per minute nozzles in the quarter circle heads and 2 gallon per minute nozzles in the half circle heads, this area would use 11 gallons per minute. So I could run all of these heads on one sprinkler zone. Moving on, it's the same process. What I like to do is Start in the tight corners where the quarter circle heads would go, get those plotted, then measure the gap between those heads, and in that gap I like to evenly space heads. Once you get all of the sprinkler heads plotted, then it's time to start planning where sprinkler valves and sprinkler zones will be. This is what the plot plan looks like with all the sprinkler heads entered in on the plan. Next I will start plotting in my supply line and planning where I want the sprinkler valves to go. When I draw in a supply line on my sprinkler designs, what I like to do is enter it on the plot plan as a dashed line, and that way I don't get it confused with other sprinkler zone lines. So as you can see, I have part of the sprinkler supply line drawn in, and here I'm drawing in the first valve. And as you can see, a little further up the supply line, I have a cluster of 2 valves. On this zone, it has 8 sprinkler heads. I will use Rainbird's R17 rotary nozzles on it, and it will use around 11 gallons a minute. The next sprinkler zone also has 8 heads. I will use the Rainbird R17 rotary nozzles on it also, and it will use around 10 gallons a minute. Remember, when you're designing a sprinkler system, you never want to mix head types. By that I mean you don't want to have an R17 nozzle watering with a 15 van nozzle, and you don't want a 15 van head mixed in with rotors. And the reason is the precipitation rates are all different on these type of heads. So with one head you would be getting a lot more water than you would with another head, so you would have a burn spot in one part of your lawn and another part of your lawn would be getting too wet. That's why you never want to mix heads. Moving on, I have 3 valves designed in. Here I'm putting 3 more valves in the cluster. This will water this back section of the yard and a drip circuit. Here I'm continuing the supply line along the back of the house. And here I'm drawing in the pipe for a drip circuit. Now this pipe will lay above ground. Drip lines are designed to lay on the surface. This area of the design has 5 heads. What I will install here is Rainbird's 5004 rotors. On the quarter heads I will use a 1.5 gallon nozzle, and on the half circle heads I will use a 3 gallon per minute nozzle. This next area has 5 heads. The distances are less than the last area, so I will use Rainbird's 3504 heads. The quarter heads I will use 1 gallon per minute nozzles, and the half heads I will use 2 gallons per minute nozzles. On to the last area. I need 3 more valves to run the heads that are on this side of the house. I have 2 lawn circuits and 1 drip circuit. When I do valves in clusters, I like to keep the clusters to 3 valves or less. That's because if you get more than 3 valves, then you have a lot of pipes in one single trench, and with a lot of pipes in the trench, maintenance in the future can be a problem. And here I'm finishing up drawing in the lines for another drip circuit. Remember, drip circuits are low volume, low pressure, usually 30 to 50 pounds. Normally you will install a pressure reducer and a filter at the beginning of the circuit. And here I'm drawing in the piping that will feed the rotors in this area of the yard. When you draw in the piping for a sprinkler zone, try and do it so that you have T's and H's in the design, and that way you don't have one long single run of pipe feeding all the heads. You don't have as much friction loss in your pipe when you do this style of designing. Okay, we're down to the last circuit. So in this sprinkler design, there are 9 valves. 3 of the valves are drip circuits. 3 of the sprinkler valves run rotors, and 3 of the valves run 1804 series spray heads with rotary nozzles. This is what the completed plan looks like. Notice that I've drawn in slopes on the plan, so this will help with installing automatic drains to prevent freezing. I've located the timer in the back corner of the garage. Notice that there is a sprinkler trench close by, so it will be pretty easy to get timer wire to the timer. So all there is left to do now is to come up with a materials list. On this design, I will use 1-inch PVC Schedule 40 pipe as my supply line, and there are a couple reasons for doing this. First, there is a little less friction loss through a 1-inch supply than there is through a 3/4 supply, even though this system is being fed by a 3/4 meter. Secondly, most sprinkler valves that are available in 1-inch size. So it's easier to run a 1-inch supply, install 1-inch valves, then reduce down to 3/4 inch pipe size when feeding the zone lines. What happens now in figuring your materials list is a lot of measuring and counting. What you want to do is, with your ruler, remember that the scale is 1 inch equals 20 feet. You want to measure out all of the sprinkler zone lines. They will be 3/4 inch. You want to measure out the supply line. It will be 1 inch. And then you want to count heads and figure T's, elbows, bushings, and all that other fun stuff. If you would like to see the materials list for this sprinkler design, you can click the link on the video description on this page, and it will take you to a downloads page on my website where you can download the materials list and this sprinkler design. So that completes this video on how to design a sprinkler system. If you would like to see more of my videos, please visit my YouTube channel, IceKeeper1.